Hi, this is Scott Johnson. I want to welcome you back to Grace on Fire. We've been going through a powerful series called How to Connect with God's Blueprint for Your Life. This is a third in the series. Stick with me. I can't wait to share this week's episode with you.
Welcome to an exclusive production of Grace on Fire Studios, where we feature life-changing solutions that will rock your world. In this show, we bring you answers to some of life's most challenging issues. Real issues, life's answers. Cultural, social, personal. Making life work. Do you feel like the world is out of control? Living life on assignment is now possible. Your questions are God's answers. And now, your host, Scott Johnson.
All right, welcome back. Hey, before we get started on today's lesson, would you do me a favor and just share this and like this video? This is a powerful message, and it really is important that people hear it, and I know that they will thank you for it. Hey, I want to talk with you about connecting with God's blueprint for your life. Now, think about it. This is so powerful that you and I have the ability to connect to God's blueprint for our lives. I mean, think about it. The God of the universe, the God who created the heavens, the stars, the universe, our planet, and every beautiful thing that we see in nature. And you know what? He wants to connect with you. Now, to many people, that may be a scary thought because, they don't have a full understanding of God. God has been misrepresented to them through religion, through the eyes of religion, and they think of, maybe in some places, they even think of him as maybe like Zeus, the God that's sitting on the top of Mount Olympus, ready to strike and punish those mere humans that are below him. It's not like that at all. And that's what part of what we're going to talk about. To think he wants to connect with you as an individual in a powerful way is really mind-blowing. What does that look like? What does that look like to be connected with God's blueprint? And how different would our lives be? In contrast to what our lives look like right now? Would we be better for it, or would we be worse? Well, we know that Paul the Apostle, he wrote a lot about God's blueprint for our lives. And you may not recognize the word blueprint in the Bible, but let me point out some important facts. When he wrote the book of Romans, he said that the gospel is the power, literally the power of God, and that in it reveals what he called the righteousness of God. Well, wow, what a word, righteousness of God. What in the world does that mean? The righteousness of God is a word that's been really misunderstood. It's something that we're told to live up to. It's one of those inconquerable mountains that we must climb. But the righteousness of God, he says here, has been revealed to us. Okay, and so in Romans chapter 1, verse 17, the very next verse tells us that the righteousness of God literally unveils or shows us the life God always had in mind for us. Isn't that powerful? Think about that. It reveals to us. It gives us the ability to see things as they are. Now, you remember back in the book of Genesis when Adam and Eve took part of that forbidden fruit. And it says that they became naked, and really that they lost sight of who they are. And out of that came a perception that went all throughout humanity that distorted man's view and opinion of themselves, man's view and opinion of God, man's view and opinion of everything around them. It was a distortion to the very truth that God wanted to reveal to them and have them live and abide in. And this is exactly what the gospel is about. It reveals to us God's plan, God's vision, what God sees and has in mind for us, and what God has revealed to us. It is the ability to see things as they are. And that's so powerful when you think about it. And it's important that you know this for yourself. You see, the old covenant or the law reveals how guilty and out of sync humanity is. But the gospel reveals how forgiven and restored humanity is to God's original blueprint. Yeah, that's right. You have been restored. Humanity has been restored. They just need to know about it. All right, so verse 18 in Romans chapter 1 goes on in it to say that it shows us a contrast to the counterfeit way in which humanity functions. And it talks about the wrath of God to people who are not in congruency or in harmony with the truth. Well, people have become completely blindfolded in their own understanding. In other words, in their own righteousness. All right, not God's righteousness, which has been freely provided to them. In their own understanding, their own perceptions, their own blueprint has become distorted. And we can see the results of that in our world all around us. I mean, it doesn't take long to turn on the TV and see some of what we're seeing to know that there is some blatant distorted thinking out in this world. And you see, the problem is it is incongruent to God's blueprint. It is out of harmony, which is what sin is all about. And that's how I define sin. Sin is literally being incongruent. It's being out of sync. It's out of harmony of the way things should be. Living a life out of sync or harmony with God's blueprint. So the question is, can people choose to live out their lives like this? Well, absolutely yes. God is not going to interrupt people's choices in order for them to live the way they want. If they want to live the way they want and choose, they can do that. But sadly, the end result will be destruction. I mean, there's natural consequences to the decisions that we make throughout our lives. And we can see that not only does it affect us, if I make wrong choices, but those consequences affect lives and people around me. So it's not really in the best interests of people to really be living according to their own blueprint or their distorted view and opinion of themselves and their world. Certainly not because God desires it to be this way. God has no desire that men should perish. He desires that all men should have life, that they should have it abundantly, that they should be free men, free women to live this world through his blueprint. And his blueprint is not something that is constrictive. We think of God, we think that he wants to constrain us, he wants to control us, he wants to stall us, he wants to take the word fun out of our vocabulary. And that is not true at all. That is another distortion, a lie that Satan has perpetuated throughout our world. Let me give you an example about this that'll help you. Now, if I'm driving down the highway in the opposite direction and all the cars are coming toward me and I happen to get into a head-on collision with the cars, the question, did they cause the accident? Did those cars that hit me, wrecked into me, maimed, and people are laying with bodies that were broken as a result, did they cause that accident? Well, absolutely no. I mean, it should be obvious. But we live in a world where all truth is relative, right? So I could get out of that car and say, hey, why did you hit me? What are you doing to me? How come can't you see I'm driving? Couldn't you see me coming down the road? No, it didn't matter what I say or think, because there are absolutes in this world. And the truth was, I was absolutely wrong, driving down the wrong side of the street. Wouldn't you agree with me? Well, I opposed, by doing what I did, the city designers who create the blueprint of the highway system. After all, they said everybody is going this way is supposed to be on the right side of the highway, not on driving on the left. That is, of course, if you live in the UK. Well, if I don't drive according to the blueprint of the highway system and the laws of that land, I'm going to run into problems. So it's important to know this because it really stops us from blaming God and everyone else for the ills of this world. And yes, I realize that's uncomfortable because it means that we have to take responsibility, and we don't want to do that sometimes. So we need to understand that we set ourselves up for failure most of the time. You know, I had a friend, he used to say that it's the 6 inches between our ears that causes all the problems that we face in our lifetime. And that is so true. You might say, what about, the story of Job in the Bible? I mean, remember all the problems he had? I mean, his wife died and he had people, he lost land, he lost friends, and his world was falling apart. And it seemed like God allowed that. And the truth is, you need to understand that that's not true. That's another book in the Bible that's certainly misunderstood in a big way. And I can bring it all down to one verse that God spoke to Job about. And it's in Job chapter 40, verse 8. And God told Job, he said, would you condemn me to justify yourself? Would you blame me so that you can walk, really, what he was saying, in blindness? And the answer obviously is no. So we know just from that one verse there were some other things going on. Job was blaming God. And God said, hey, don't blame me. Don't blame me. So we have to look a little more closely at the book of Job, and I certainly invite you to that study. So the truth of the gospel, when we're looking at Romans chapter 1, verse 17, reveals the righteousness of God. And remember this, the righteousness of God means the blueprint for humanity. The gospel is not a list of do's and don'ts and more things that you have to do to make your life more difficult. You see, that's a thing that religion has tried to place upon humanity, that it's all about your doing. No, it's all about your believing, to be honest. Romans chapter 1, verse 17 tells us that there is literal power in the gospel. Power. Well, why is there power? Well, it's because it reveals the truth of what Jesus accomplished for us through his death, his burial, and his resurrection. He just didn't leave you on the sideline. He's not like a cloud that's trying to escape connection. God desires to connect with humanity. And so he removed all the obstacles, and he accomplished it through the death of his son, Jesus, through the death, burial, and resurrection. So, what are some of the benefits that we see in our lives as a result of the power of the gospel? Well, this is just a very short list of some of the things. You know, I'm a results-oriented type of person, and I want to know the results, what it means for me in my life. And I hope you as well. So, number one, it literally means a personal connection and relationship with God. That is so powerful when you think about it, that you and I can be connected to the master designer of our lives, the master designer of the universe, the grand designer who created all things and knows how everything should work. All right, that's good news, isn't it? Well, the second thing is he gives us the Holy Spirit. He just doesn't leave us with a book of rules, do's and don'ts. He gave us the Holy Spirit in our lives to help us, to guide us, to teach us how to access this new life in him, this kingdom life. And then he says, here it is, my free gift to you. Thirdly, we experience greater victory in areas of our life that we never thought possible. All the difficult issues and things that you may be going through, God sets you up for success. Fourthly, the ability to experience meaning and purpose in our lives. And I think this is really, really big because our world is looking for meaning and purpose. And in fact, out of their bent idea, their perceptions that are based on a lie, they're connecting and finding meaning in things that are not God. And so as a result, when those things fail, guess what? Their life lacks the stability of that God gives us and provides for us. So we need to understand that He means us to have our needs met through Him in every area of our lives. You know, He gives us purpose. He gives us things like love, joy, peace, long suffering, which means to be able to persevere in those times of suffering or moments of endure, or facing something that's not comfortable. Kindness. He provides goodness, provides faithfulness. And these, my friend, are all the fruits of the Spirit that are at work in the life of the believer. All right, number 5, happiness in our lives. That's one of the benefits to living a life based on the gospel of peace that's been provided to us. Happiness in our lives, peace, and stability in the midst of the storms of life. Now, remember, He didn't promise to say that you'd never have a storm, because certainly, remember, there's a cause and effect happening all around us. And as a result, there are storms, there's difficulties, there's things that you may not have any part of, but yet they come to your door knocking. But God says, I'm going to walk you through it. I'm going to provide peace and stability in the midst of those difficult times. Isn't that good news? Number 6, the promise of health and provision for your every need. Wow. Promise in health? I've seen many miracles in my lifetime. And when He talks about needs, He's just not talking about physical needs. He's talking about what I call the need-driven drives of our life. In other words, the things that drive us to connect, to do things that where we're trying to find satisfaction when God says, no, I am your need meter. If you when you find me, it will set you free to live a truly free life. The next one is wisdom. He not only does He give us wealth and provision for our every need, but He gives us wisdom on how to walk this out. He says in the Word, He says, ask of me, ask for wisdom, I will give it to you liberally. It's a free gift. And that's what Jesus has for you and I. And that's what the gospel is all about. And the results He gives us out of all this is that He works all things out together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to His purpose. So He just does not leave you by yourself to struggle throughout this life, but the gospel releases us to a life of freedom, an experience where we are finding our nourishment from God Himself. We are His children. He loves you. He wants to connect with you. And He will walk this life out with you hand in hand and work everything out for your good. That's Romans chapter 8, verse 28. All right, my friend. I hope that you learned some things through this short lesson, and I encourage you to share it with your friends, your family. Hit the like button, and let's get the good news out. I can't wait to connect with you next week. I'm going to continue this series. We're going to talk about the 4 pillars, the 4 absolutes that you must have in your life in order to walk this truth out, where it concerns connecting with God's blueprint for your life. Well, God bless you, and we will see you next week. Bye for now.